Shabbat Shalom, everyone. If you didn't get a chance to meet my friends from Las Vegas, please say hi to them after services. My friend, Dr. Howard X. Kramer, every morning before Minyan would come in and we would swap movie quotes. So I decided in his honor I would give a sermon about movie quotes. It turns out that some of the most famous movie lines that we've heard and repeated, probably for the last 50 years, have been misquoted. For instance, most people can tell you that the line from Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, is, "Luke, I am your father." But it's actually, "No, I am your father." Right? In Casablanca, she never actually says, "Play it again, Sam." She says, "Play it, Sam. Play as time goes by." In Apollo 13, people like to quote the famous line, "Houston, we have a problem." But Tom Hanks actually says, "Houston, we've had a problem." I'm just ruining everybody's evening, I'm sorry. The quote in Jaws that people like to repeat is, "We're gonna need a bigger boat." If you look at the subtitles, the real line is, "You're going to need a bigger boat." And finally, the actual line from Field of Dreams is, "If you build it, he will come." Sorry. So maybe these aren't the biggest game changers for the film industry, but what they demonstrate for me is that people aren't paying close enough attention to the actual movies and are typically going more off of hearsay of what they think they heard in the film. Now, like I mentioned, this isn't so important because movies aren't sacred canon for most people anyway. I mean, for me they are, but it tends to get us in trouble when we start misquoting or misremembering important things. A century ago, a witness to a crime was perhaps the most important thing you could have for a trial, because they could lay out what happened, they could tell you what was said, who did what, etc. However, nowadays, with modern technology, we're finding that witnesses are not the most helpful with regard to the actual events of what happened. Witnesses misremember, or frankly, don't even remember the most important of details. Also, witnesses have biases or tend to favor demographics of people more like them. And now, like I mentioned, with the advancements in technology, we're finding that video recordings of the incident provide a far better account of what actually happened than someone who might have witnessed it firsthand. So where am I getting at with all of this? I want to admit something to you all. Although I am 37 years old, I went to seminary for too long. Apparently, I have been misquoting or misremembering a scene from our Parshat, Vayetse, and chances are you have too. We'll do a little poll here. I've always imagined the following like this. This is from our Parshat. Jacob goes and works for his uncle Lavan for 7 long years because he loves Rachel. Finally, after the 7 years is finally over, Jacob tells him that it's time for him to get married. Mazel tov. So Lavan holds a big wedding feast in the evening and brings out Leah with a veil covering her face. Jacob has a lot to drink at the wedding feast, l'chaim, and after 7 years of waiting for his bride, he is hot to trot, shall we say. He brings Leah into his tent, and he doesn't realize until after the marriage is consummated, the next morning when the sun comes up, that he has married the wrong gal. Oi! So did you imagine the scene more or less like that when you heard that story? Okay, all right. Well, it turns out that that's close, but it's not exactly right. I want to read you a quick translation of the text so we can get a good play-by-play. This is chapter 29, verse 20. Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. Aww. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my time is fulfilled, that I may cohabit with her." Laban gathered all the people of the place and made a feast. When evening came, he took his daughter Leah, brought her to him. He cohabitated with her. Laban had given his maidservant Zilpah to his daughter Leah as her maid. When morning came, it was Leah. So he said to Laban, "What have you done to me? I was in your service for Rachel. Why did you deceive me?" So what you did not hear is anything about Jacob being drunk. And what you definitely did not hear was anything about Leah wearing a veil. Now, I'm not alone in my imagining this. Leah's veil apparently is something that we all think is in the text, but is not actually there. I challenge you to do the following after Shabbat. Go into Google and type in Jacob marries Leah. Type that into the search bar, and if you do a Google image search, I guarantee you most all of the results you will see will probably be from pictures of an animated children's Bible, and sure enough, in each one of those pictures, Leah will be wearing a veil. Now I have to wonder, where does the veil come from? I had to do some homework. I checked a lot of sources. I did a bunch of digging, and I've got to say, I didn't see anything about a veil anywhere. Allow me to add, that doesn't mean there isn't anything about a veil. There just wasn't something super accessible or traditional about a veil that I could find in the commentary, in a midrash. The only acceptable theory was this might have been a mistranslation in the Midrash Rabbah. I will say that Jacob being drunk is a common theme, but you'll notice the story doesn't mention he was drunk or that he even drank anything. So it appears that this too was something invented later on. But the veil must have happened somewhere along the way, because I have heard many rabbis at Jewish weddings, colleagues of mine, say out loud the reason why brides arrive at the chuppah wearing a veil is because our matriarch, Leah, wore a veil at her wedding. But that isn't in our text. And really, it isn't anywhere other than Christian artwork. So where does this come from? I want to introduce you to a phenomena called the Mandela effect. Ooh. In a nutshell, the Mandela effect is a phenomenon of having memories that don't match with current reality or history. It was named after Nelson Mandela died in 2013, but many people seem to have remembered him dying sometime in the 80s. Other examples of the Mandela effect are that the character from the board game Monopoly has a monocle. He doesn't. Or that the children's book character Curious George has a tail. He doesn't. So why do people remember that they did? Well, collective false memories might play a part in this. Usually minuscule details of a story or a character can get flubbed easily, and collectively people misidentify them or mistake them without intending to. For instance, the Monopoly Man. Anybody know what the Monopoly Man's name is, by the way? Me either. All right. Although he dresses rather dapper, he doesn't have a monocle. However, you know who does? Mr. Peanut, the trademarked character from Planters Nuts, who also has a top hat and a cane. He does wear a monocle. Seeing as how both of these characters debuted in the same decade, many people innocently mistake the character traits of one for another. So, back to Leah and her veil, I have a theory. My theory is at some point, artists began to depict Leah wearing a veil to justify Jacob's kind of clumsy act. Because if he married Leah totally sober and with her unveiled, there is something about that anecdote that just doesn't add up. They say the devil is in the details, and I've got to admit, they're right. The rabbis use this story to illustrate a lot of points, but I want to use it to make another point. We really have to be conscious of the stories we tell and how we tell them. Are we getting all the facts straight? And the things we know without a shadow of a doubt to be true, are we sure they really are? This year, more than any, it's important to know what we know. And if we don't know it, maybe it's better not to say anything at all. Because if we say things that aren't true, Houston, we have a problem. Shabbat Shalom.